The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yo, Philly, how you's doing? Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. I'm Bill Kashatus, your host on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Rocco Colavito, who played for the Cleveland Indians and Detroit Tigers over a 14-year Major League career, is my guest on the podcast. Rocky is among career leaders in many categories, including his 374 home runs as a right-handed hitter and his 268 homers as a right fielder. Baseball historian Bill Jenkinson ranks Rocky as having the strongest arm of any outfield in baseball history. Colavito also holds all-time single-season marks for best fielding average by an outfielder and fewest errors by an outfielder at 0, both set in 1965. Rocky was also considered one of the most courteous players in the game and a fan favorite in Cleveland, where he played the majority of his Major League career. I am truly privileged to call him a friend. Welcome to the podcast, Rocky.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to be here.
Rock, you grew up in the Bronx during the Great Depression, and your hometown Yankees were your favorite team. When you were 16 years old, you had an opportunity to sign with the Yankees, but you signed with the Cleveland Indians instead. Why was that?
Well, to be honest with you, they sent a scout to my house who was under Paul Critchell, who scouted and signed Lou Gehrig, but this guy was an assistant to Critchell, and his name was Harry Hess. And his attitude really, I was just a kid, but, you know, he was smoking a big cigar, and he was acting like there's nobody like the Yankees, and I loved the Yankees at that time. And I don't know, he left a bad taste in my mouth, and I even went as far as saying to my brother, you handle this guy because I can't take him. And I was just, like I said, like you mentioned, I was only 16. I sensed that big shot attitude about him. So anyway, they made me an offer of, you come to spring training, if you make a team, we'll match what Cleveland has offered you. And I said, and I told him, I said, why should I go to you? I said, when, and in the back of my mind, I knew the Yankee outfield was outstanding. I mean, they had Hank Bauer, or Joe DiMaggio, Hank Bauer, Mickey Mantle, Gene Woodley, and I thought, man, you know, that's going to be a hard outfield to crack. So I wasn't too thrilled about really signing with them. So anyway, I said, why should I sign? Why should I go down there on a contingent basis and when I have a solid offer from Cleveland? And they were the first ones to make one. And I left it right there.
That's the old "a bird in one hand is better than two in the bush" philosophy, and I think it paid off really well for you. There are some writers that have speculated, though, that you might be in the Hall of Fame had you played in New York, because you would have a number of world championships under your belt. Think about it. Let's say you played for the Yankees between 56 and 66, which was the bulk of your career. Not only would you have been in the same outfield as Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle, but you would have had 4 World Series championship rings, 1956, 58, 61, and 62, and the chance to get 4 more since the Yanks went to the series in 57, 60, 63, and 64. And with your career stats, which in my opinion are a Hall of Fame like, you would be in Cooperstown today. Ever think about that?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, Bill, I have. And I also think, you know, Yankee Stadium is a tough ballpark for a right-hander. It's outstanding for a left-hander. You know, I often think, you know, would I have the same numbers? Would I have done as well? Would I have done better? But it definitely entered my mind, you know, the kind of years the Yankees had during that time because I was playing against them. But I really feel that it wasn't conducive for me the way it turned out. I really think that I made the right choice. And I mean, they had an outstanding outfield. Who is to say, where I would have ended up if they got me and then traded me? It's asking a lot to think about all those things. I think, anyway, in my own opinion.
Now, there is one thing you took with you from your boyhood, and that is, according to your first biographer, Gordon Cobbledick, who wrote "Don't Knock the Rock." Yeah. Joe DiMaggio was your favorite player as a boy, and you insisted on wearing number 5 and even copied his batting stance. Is that true?
Very true. Very true. Excuse me. I'm having trouble. Let me try to clear my throat. Excuse me, Bill. Anyway, yes. DiMaggio was absolutely my favorite player. Right. I don't believe in heroes. I never use that term, and I don't really like that term. A hero, in my mind, is a guy that, in a war, in that type of environment, saves people's lives and does stuff like that. So I don't think any ball player is a hero. I think he could be your favorite player, and most likely was the favorite player of some fans. But that being said, to me, overall, I think I made the right move. Okay, let's put it that way. I signed with Cleveland. I was very comfortable with them. They were the first ones to make an offer, and they held true to what they said they would do. And then I met Hank Greenberg, who to me was a prince. I mean, Hank Greenberg was a gentleman far beyond anybody that I ever met. He's a wonderful human being. He was, and when he gave you his word, he kept it.
And Greenberg is the general manager that brought you up for the first time to the Cleveland Indians in September 1955. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely correct.
I want to talk a little bit about Reading because, of course, Reading is the Phillies' Double-A farm club, and it has been ever since 1967. But not many fans know that the Cleveland Indians had their farm team down there in the 1950s. And, of course, you played your first season of pro ball in 1952, but in 1953 the Indians assigned you to Reading. And there you met two very special individuals who would play important roles in your life. Those individuals were pitcher Herb Score and a young woman by the name of Carmen Perotti. Tell us about how you met them and why they became so special in your life.
Okay. Let me correct you about one thing, okay?
Okay.
If you don't. 51 was my first season.
Okay.
1951, not 52. 51, I played at Daytona Beach in the Florida State League, okay? That was the Cleveland Indians Class D farm team and also where we trained, okay? The whole entire farm system trained at Daytona Beach. Out on the island, we had offices, barracks. They were barracks that were specifically for officers during the war, I guess. And we used that facility, and there was 5 fields there, not far from the barracks. You could walk. So we ended up playing there, and that's where I played my whole first season. We had 3 in those days. There was D, C, B, A, double A, triple A, big leagues. We had 3 D teams. We had Daytona Beach. Yeah, that's a fact. We had Daytona Beach. We had Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we had also Batavia, New York. So, and they signed me to Daytona Beach, and I I really was happy with that because Daytona Beach was such a nice place to play, and I enjoyed that season. And I was lucky enough to lead the league in home runs.
So where were you in 52?
52, I split the season. Well, not exactly an even split. I started out at Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in the 3I League, which was considered an excellent B League. They always said that, just like Reading, they always sent their best pitching prospects to that league. That was what I had heard and understood, because the ballparks were big and they wanted them to do well, and evidently a lot of them did. So I was assigned there, but after about, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, I got the flu, and we were on our way to Davenport to play a series, and that's the sickest I've ever been up to that point, and they took me to the hospital, and I was put into a room, and I lost 17 pounds, Bill, in 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. I was a sick puppy, and then after that issue, when we got back to Cedar Rapids, the team went on, and I stayed in the hospital, like I said, for 10 days, and they didn't have road trips in that classification that were 10 days at that time. Not that I knew of. Anyway, then I went back to, I busted, I guess, back to Cedar Rapids, and then they decided to move me to a warmer climate, and they sent me to Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the Tri-State League. Okay, so that was also a B League. It was a lateral move, so I got sent there, and I played the rest of the season there, and I had that's so long ago, but I usually have a very good memory for that stuff.
Well, that takes us to 53 in Reading.
Yeah. Well, I had 11 home runs and 52 runs batted in 55 games, I think, at Spartanburg. Then 53, I was assigned to Reading, and Kirby Fowler was the manager. And
that's where you first met and roomed with Herb Score?
No. I'll tell you where I first roomed with Herb Score was in spring training. Herbie's roommate and my roommate were avid poker players, and they always had a poker game going. He didn't play poker, and at that point, I hadn't played poker either. And so they, for a few nights they were playing. The roommate would come in and disturb the guy that was, asleep, and that being Herbie and that being me. So we said, hey, why don't you two guys room together, and Herbie and I room together, And that's how we became good friends. But something that was really strange? I often think about it, and I don't have a clue why. And Herbie and I did not room together in Reading. I mean, not during the home stays, like a lot of guys would have done. And I don't know why that was. I can't remember it. We never had a harsh word, nothing like that. And but we had fun rooming together in spring training. So I mean, we were just talking baseball and stuff like that. Well, Herbie was from Long Island, New York originally, and I was from the Bronx, so we had a lot in common.
Now, there was another individual you met during that season in Reading. It was a local resident by the name of Carmen Parati. Well, how did you meet her?
Well, our friend, who became our maid of honor, who to this day is a dear friend of my wife and mine, and there's 3 girls that grew up together. My wife, Carmen Parati at that point, Mary Attili, and Ilda Avendado. So they were 3 pals, and they still to this day are big time pals. And when I met Carmen, Mary introduced me to Carmen in a restaurant called the Piccadilly. Okay? The Piccadilly was it was kind of a divish restaurant, but it was reasonable, and we didn't make much money, and so we ate where it was. We hoped it was decent and reasonable, you know. So Mary introduced me to Carmen, and we were talking at the table, and lo and behold, they missed the last bus to go home out the temple, and they said, "Oh my God!" They were frantic because they knew their parents would be mad, you know. And they said, "Oh, what are we going to do?" You know. So I said, "I'll take you home," you know. And they said, "Would you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So got in my car, and I took them home, and Mary directed me to take. Said Carmen was there. Well, she lived about 2 blocks closer to where we were coming from. So we dropped her off, and Mary says all I talked about was Carmen. So I guess I had my eye on Carmen.
And Carmen didn't know anything about baseball. It was Mary who was the baseball fan, right?
That's absolutely correct. Mary knew a lot about baseball. She kept up with everything. She knew what was going on.
Uh-huh. Now, of course, you and Carmen married, and you raised a family together, and you made your home there in Reading and continue to stay in the area. What was it like to raise a family in Reading?
It was excellent. I thought. I told my wife originally wanted to live in New York. You know,
wow.
What she saw in the movies, you know, the penthouse apartments, all that fancy stuff. And I said, it's just not like that. I said, apartments and the buildings and stoops and stuff like that. That's where we live. We have penthouse apartments. So I took her home, you know, to where my family was, and I let her see how it really was. And after that, she calmed down about living in New York.
And saw how much better and how much more you could get in Reading. So
yeah.
Well, listen, you were promoted to Cleveland on September 24th, 1955. It wasn't until the following year you became the team's starting right fielder. And over the next 3 seasons, you were not only the Indians' most consistent power hitter, but also the fans' favorite player. There was even a Rocco Colavito fan club. How were you able to win over the hearts of the hometown fans, Rock?
I don't think I can answer that, though, to be honest.
Can I make some observations on that one from what I have read about you and understood about you? Unlike a lot of guys who would sign so many autographs and then take off, you would always sign every autograph for every person until the last one was gone. And there is, of course, stories of you, and this is why the kids loved you so much. You used to have them all line up and in discipline, wait in line for your signature, and the only request you had is to say thank you afterwards. But that endeared you, and rightfully so, to those fans. In addition to that, you never treated anybody disrespectfully in Cleveland. Everyone knew that you did not use profanity. You carried yourself with a lot of personal integrity. And that's really what we want from our baseball heroes, and we don't see enough of that today. Now, I've heard that from former fans of yours. I've read about it. So I think you were a tremendous boon to Cleveland because they were, as you may or may not know, considering moving the franchise to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there are those writers who've said that you saved the franchise from moving. You kept it in Cleveland. Now, I know you're too humble to admit anything to that, but I think that's really important to understand. Let me ask you about this then, because I know you'll be able to talk about this issue. Cleveland was one of the first clubs to integrate. Club president Bill Veeck promoted Larry Doby to the majors in July of 1947. That was the same year that Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier in the National League. And by the way, I don't think Doby gets nearly as enough credit as Robinson does. And then later the Indians signed Satchel Paige, the best pitcher in Negro League history, and Minnie Minoso. Rock, what was it like to play on a team with black players, which was really unusual in the American League in the 1950s, and specifically playing the same outfield with Larry Doby?
Well, I never found color to be an issue. I mean,
Why is that?
Look, I played in the minor leagues with black players, and they were outstanding. They were friends of mine, and you know, I used to hurt my feelings terribly when, like in Florida, when we played exhibition games, and we'd go from the town that we were in, maybe to say you'd go to Tampa or some other place, and you had to stop for something to eat because it was a long ride, and they wouldn't serve the black guys, and I could never understand that, and I always used to find out what they wanted to eat, and I'd get it and bring it out to them. And but that I played with Joe Caffey, who was from Canton, Ohio, Warren, Ohio, and I played with Billy Harrow, who was from Troy, New York, was a great athlete, and Caffey is the fastest human being I ever saw, and I played with Suitcase Simpson at AAA, Sam Jones. I mean, I played with so many black guys. It really didn't. I never thought about they're black. They were a hell of a ball player, or a hell of a pitcher, a hell of an outfield, a hell of a hitter. I mean, I never thought of them as a color. You know, they're black, pink, green, white. I didn't care. It didn't make any difference to me. Only thing that made a difference to me is their ability. You know, that they were good players and they were helping the team. That's it.
Now, do you think the fact that you were raised in a very diverse neighborhood in the Bronx had something to do with it too? Because, you know, that exposure or lack of exposure, I should say, is what causes discrimination in a lot of people. But in New York, you know, you're growing up in a much more socially diverse environment. So you were raised playing with those kids. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Without a doubt, I'm sure that had a great influence on my thinking without my really knowing it. You know, I went to school with black kids. I played ball with them since I was a kid. It made no difference to me. Again, I repeat, I'm being repetitious, but it's the God's honest truth. What color they were, I didn't think about that. Hey, how good could they throw? How could they run? Could they play the field? Or, you know, the pitcher, their good pitch. That's all that meant to me. It didn't mean anything to me what color they were.
What was it like playing with Doby in the same outfield?
Larry and I were friends from day one. I mean, he was an outstanding outfielder, and he had power, and he was a good hitter, and he could run well. He didn't have the speed of Cappy, but he could run well, and he just was a hell of a. Another guy was Davey Pope, who was a right fielder when what's his name hit that home run to beat the Indians in the World Series. How do you like that? His name won't come to me. He was a pinch hitter and played occasional. He's an outfielder. Oh, I can't believe I can't think of it. See, that's what happens when you get to be 85. Eh?
You also played with Roger Maris, who of course was you roomed with him, and he was later traded to the Yankees and broke Babe Ruth's single season home run record with 61 and 61. What was it like playing with Roger in the same outfield?
Roger was a gem. I want to tell you something about Roger Maris, okay? Roger Maris, I never saw him make an errant throw, a bad throw, errant. He was an outstanding outfielder. He had outstanding speed, not Joe Cappy speed, but outstanding speed. He'd take your butt out on a double play in a hair, and he had good power, and he was a good hitter, and he was a bear down player. And Roger was a gem. He was a good friend of mine. Roger and I played pool together when we were kids. In his first year, my second year, at Daytona Beach. We used to go over on the bus to the near the beach side, because that's where they had one on the island side too. But I don't know why we used to go to the beach side at that time. And they had a pool hall there, and we played pool, Roger and I.
Rock, could you have foreseen the career that Maris had? Because Cleveland didn't really give him much of a chance. I mean, in fact, at one point, didn't they platoon you and Roger?
Absolutely. And Roger and I, and this is the truth, okay? Roger and I went to the ballpark every day together, because we lived about 2 blocks apart in Palmer, Ohio. And if Roger drove, my wife would pick up Pat, and they'd go to the game, okay? Because neither one of them had kids at the time, okay? And vice versa. If I drove, Pat would pick up Carmen. Mm-hmm. So, and Roger was a gem. I liked him an awful lot. Well, I'll tell you one thing about Roger. He could do it all, and if he liked, there was no in-betweens with him, though. He either liked you or he didn't. I mean, there was no halfway, saying, like, he's all right, something like that. Roger either liked you or he didn't. And he didn't hate nobody that I know of, but that's just the way he was. He was strong-minded, and he was a strong kid. He was a hell of a football player. I mean, he had scholarships everywhere, a lot of places.
Yeah. On April 17th, 1960, General Manager Frank Lane traded you to the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
That was a very unhappy day for the Cleveland fans. And afterwards, the team swiftly dropped in the standings from a contender that had gone to the World Series as recently as 1954 to a perennial loser. In fact, the Indians would not return to the World Series again until 1995. And Cleveland sports writer Terry Pluto attributes the poor fortunes of the organization to the so-called curse of Rocco Colavito. How about it, Rocky? Did you curse the Indians?
That's always funny. That really is. I never cursed anybody or put a curse on. In Italian, we call that the malotia. Yeah, it's the evil eye.
Uh-huh.
And I never did that to anybody, but it brought a lot of publicity, because they had my picture on the cover of The Curse of Rocco Colavito, and the book was mainly about the team, and which was fine by me, and it was a chapter about me, and maybe a chapter about a couple other key players, Herbie being one, and but basically it was about the team's doldrums during that period.
And I mean, wouldn't you say? I mean, I've looked at Frank Lane and what he did. He just busted apart a team that could have returned to the World Series. I mean, the Indians' problems really did begin at that point. What was that, about money, or what a power play, or just trying to put his own imprint on the team? Why did he break apart a great team?
Yeah, the last one is the one that you want to dwell on. Frank Lane, let me tell you something, okay? Let me go back to Roger for a second, all right?
Yep.
The Kansas City had their choice. This was told to me between Roger and me in the trade.
Wow.
Now, when Roger got traded there, and that's what I was told, and a pretty good source. So anyway, they chose Roger, and they say because he had real good speed. I don't know what the reason was, but Roger was a hell of a player. So Kansas City was like considered a Yankee farm team.
Right.
And I'm sure you heard that in the past. And like whenever they needed a player, they seemed to pluck one from Kansas City and do well with it. You know, so that's what Roger's fate was. He got traded to the Yankees, which is probably the best thing that ever happened to him. So now we get back to where we were, and you said about Frank Lane. Frank Lane was an egomaniac. He was. I'm going to be frank here, okay? Maybe some people don't expect that from me, but I'm going to be very frank. He was an egomaniac, and plus, he was an idiot, okay? He couldn't see 10 feet in front of him. Now, I'm not faulting anybody for not being able to see, but when you can't see 10 feet in front of you, you can't judge a baseball player. You can't. He used to carry 1050 binoculars and sit in the upper deck. I saw him up there many a game that I played. And he just was so, he was vindictive. I mean, the guy was, he really was, if he liked you, like Minnie, he liked Minnie. Don't ask me why. And I know why Minnie was a hell of a guy. I like Minnie a lot. But he liked Minnie so much, like he bought him a $5,000 Cadillac.
Wow.
I mean, and that kind of stuff. And he just did oddball things. And he loved himself. I'll give you a for instance. Every morning there was a secretary who was a secretary to Greenberg, secretary level before Greenberg. He was a male secretary. His name was Bob Gill, okay? And his job in the morning was he opened up 35 papers that they had subscriptions to, and Frank Lane ordered him and to find any article in the sports page and anything that had his name on it, and had to put it on his desk or have him see it. That's how much of an egomaniac he was. 35 papers from around the country, main cities.
For you though, the trade worked out fairly well because you went to a contender, the Detroit Tigers, correct?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I know you didn't want to leave Cleveland. I mean, that was your home. You really considered it your home. And as evidenced by the fans who greeted you on opening day in Cleveland of 1960, when you were with the Tigers, you had banners, you had people giving you standing ovations, and you even had the owner of the club give you a thumbs up from the mezzanine, I guess. And you know, obviously Lane saw the error of his ways because he brought you back in 1965, correct?
Well, Gabe Paul brought me back.
Oh, Gabe Paul did, right? That's right. I'm sorry, my mistake. But you know, you went on to have some really good years with the Detroit Tigers, the Kansas City A's, and then of course another stint in Cleveland. And I once asked you this, Rock, and I was a little surprised to hear the answer. You told me that you enjoyed playing in the Midwest so much that you wouldn't have traded it for anything. Now, you played your last season with the Yankees, but it's a little surprising. It's like, wow, he wouldn't want to go home or play on the East Coast. Why did you like the Midwest so much? I mean, I know you certainly spent time there, but what was it about the Midwest? The fans, what was it?
Absolutely. The fans were appreciative. And when you talk about Midwest, I'm talking about from Cleveland on, okay? Because that's like considered the Midwest to me. Now, the fans were outstanding to me. Cleveland will always be my home in baseball. If I would ever be lucky enough, and And I know you know my sentiments about that when I told my family. And I said, if ever I would be enshrined in the Hall of Fame, I would want to go as a Cleveland player. Okay? And Detroit, the people were fine to me. My first year, they booed the hell out of me because I got off to a slow start. But they warmed up, and I think I had a pretty good following there during my 4 years there. I averaged 30. I think I averaged 35 and 100 runs batting, 35 over in 4 years. So I am not shooting my own horn. I never do that. And I say in modesty that those 4 years, if I was at Cleveland, I think my numbers would have been better.
Well, here's the interesting thing about your time in Detroit. There's two things. You played in the shadow of Al Kaline in Detroit. I mean, Kaline was the right fielder, and you had to move over to left, which affected, your total numbers for a right fielder. But at the same time,
I got to stop you there. I got to stop you, okay? Because you got to make a connection here. When I went to Detroit, I became the right fielder. Kaline went to center field, and Maxwell, Paul Maxwell, Charlie Maxwell, was the left fielder, and Kaline went to center field, and he was an outstanding center fielder, outstanding. And I never could understand why he didn't want to play center field until I heard from someone. I'm not going to mention names here. That Kaline, this is what I heard now. Okay. Never heard it from him. That Kaline didn't really want the competition, like for all-star games and stuff like that, of Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was a perennial center fielder. Now, that's what I had heard. And a lot of, the person it came from has some validity, okay? So, Kaline wanted to go back to right field, and they called me. They called me and said to me, would I mind moving over to left field? And I said, what do you mean? What do you think? So we got a deal going for Billy Bruton from Milwaukee for Frank Bowling. And I think they already had it made, but they wanted to ease it and why, I don't know. They put you out there. They put you out there, And I said to them, look, I said, I don't care where I play, just so long as you pencil in my name every day. I said, I don't care where I play. If you want to put Kaline back in right field, that's fine with me. And that's the God's honest truth. That I know is the truth because I said it.
I'll tell you what, that's exceptional for a player of your caliber. People don't like to be moved without their permission. I mean, and especially today with players of your caliber. Now,
yeah. They thought I'd really help, but I didn't. I always felt like I'm playing to win. I'm a team player. I'm not an individual person. I mean, I do the best I can. It is an individual game when it's you facing a pitcher, But that put aside, you're playing for your team to win.
Now, the other thing that happened was a blessing because you played in Detroit from 60 to 62. And that was the time of the great Mantle-Maris duo. And not many people know that while New York was singing the praises of the M&M boys, Maris and Mantle, that Detroit had the C&C boys, who were Colavito and Cash. And the sports media really played up that series whenever Detroit went into New York or New York went into Detroit. And in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Rock, but didn't you and Cash have more total RBIs than Maris and Mantle in 1961?
Exactly right. And you know something? That always bugged me that in the movie 61, that Billy Crystal never, ever mentioned one time about the C&T boys and versus the M&M boys. Not one time did he mention it, okay? And that, to be honest with you, annoyed me because I thought to myself, every time we went to New York, that's all the black headline in the sports page was, you know, the C&C boys are here, or they come to Detroit, or the M&M boys are here, you know, versus the C&C boys. And he never even mentioned it, like we were nobody or not even there.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rocky, I know that you were too modest an individual to talk about career totals, and we've talked about this issue before, but I can't help but feel that there's been a disservice to you, and the recent metrics even underscore that fact. For our listeners, I just want to go over some of your career totals. You played 14 years in the major leagues. You hit 374 home runs, 1,159 RBI. You were the You were the fifth player in American League history to have 11 consecutive 20 or more home run seasons between 1956 and 1966, and you exceeded 40 home runs 3 times and 100 RBI 6 times during that span. You also led the AL in home runs, RBI, and slugging average once each. All but 3 of your 374 career home runs were hit in the American League, which ranks you behind only Jimmy Fox, who had 524, and Harmon Killebrew, who was then at 397, among the league's right-handed hitters when you retired. Now, the new metrics, or the analytics, show that they've only added to your impressive credentials. They indicate that between 1956 and 1966, the decade of your heaviest production, you were among the top 10 players in the following categories: wins above replacement, offensive wins above replacement, on-base plus slugging, and adjusted on-base plus slugging. Now, I just cannot understand why the baseball writers only considered you 2 times for the Hall of Fame. Their votes came in 1974 and 1975, and because the vote totals fell below the percentage required to remain on the ballot, you were taken off the ballot. You have yet to be considered by the Veterans Committee. Rock, what are your feelings about the Hall of Fame?
I tell you how I feel. I'll try. Actually, I feel that there's some players in the Hall of Fame with lesser credentials than I have, but yet they're there. I never was what we used to call as a kid an AK. You know what an AK is, right?
No. What is that?
What is a donkey? It's called an ass.
Okay, I get you.
And the other word is kisser.
Yep.
Okay, now, I never was that type, but I always treated the sports writers as fairly as I could. When they asked me something, I answered them. The only one that I blocked out was Joe Falls, who would call me certain kind of names or certain things he would say about me, and so I blocked him out. If he was in the crowd of writers, say I hit a couple of home runs in a game, an instrumental in the winning hit or something, and they all come around your lockers like they always do to whoever has that type of day, and if he would be there, I said, I'm done. I'm not talking to anybody, and I wouldn't do it. And so they told him to beat it, but he always had one particular lighter, little scroungy guy who wasn't really a bad guy, but he would tell him everything that was said. So he didn't have to be there. So he got to find out whatever I had to say, and he would say stuff like personal stuff, you know. Like one time I got somebody, I got a base hit, I was on first, and somebody hit a line drive to right field for a base hit, and I went from first to third, you know, on the base hit. And he said he was starting to believe that we might be a pennant contender. And we were in the White Sox Park in Chicago, Comiskey, and he said even the flat-foot Colavito went from first to third on a base hit to right field. I mean, you know, that ain't the end of the world, but it ain't very nice either. What are you getting personal about? And then he had a column when we were on the road, RNBI, runs not batted in. Whenever I left the guy in scoring position, and who in God's name ever knocked in every runner in scoring position? Not Root, not Garrett, not Williams, not Mantle, not Maris, not DiMaggio, not Mays, not Musial, none of them. None of them ever knocked in every run. And I had a particular argument with Frank Lane because he probably picked it up from him. He was just a rotten person all the way through and through. He wasn't a nice person. And I know, I think his wife finally divorced him. She was a very nice lady.
So what in effect you're saying is that the sports writers, because of the way they kind of baited you, it was never going to happen with the sports writers. So, you know, now we have to see the Veterans Committee, because those would be your peers. And there is no way with those stats that anybody could deny that you were one of the top offensive players, top 10 offensive players in the decade 56 to 66 in your era. So I sincerely hope that the Veterans Committee takes another look here. Now, I do want to make one final note for listeners, because I'm very excited about this. Mark Summer, a writer for the Buffalo News, has just completed a biography of Rocky that will be released by McFarland Books next spring. So listeners, keep an eye out for it, because I know that Mark shares my feelings about Rocky's impressive career, and hopefully we can do something about the consideration for the Hall of Fame. Rock, listen, I want to thank you for doing the podcast, but I also want to thank you for being such a wonderful role model for other Major League Baseball players, for your contributions to the game, and especially for your friendship, which really means a lot to me. So thank you.
And ditto on that. Your friendship means a lot to me also. We become friends, not just writer and a player or whatever you want to call me. So I've always appreciated you and Mark Summer. You were both wonderful guys, easy to talk to, easy to answer the questions, and to elaborate when I could. So it's been my pleasure, believe me.
And thank you, Philly fans, for tuning in. See you next week for another podcast of Philadelphia baseball, past, present, and personal. This is Bill Kashatus, rounding third and heading home on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.